question. It's a rather long question, but I think it's important to read it to really get what the person is asking. Hi Kim, I have refrained from asking this question for many years, but I feel it's important to shed light on an area where in the past culturally we as women were not allowed to get answers for these topics. For some background, I'm a woman who has grown up in the West. From a young age, a lot of Western media showcases young people kissing or sexually driven ads. It seems like a normal, cool thing to engage in. And naturally, with the internet, I started watching porn rather early. I remember watching my first cartoon porn since the 4th grade, prior to my first menstrual cycle. But engaging in this at an early age, I noticed it warped my mind. I could sense the mental projections and nasty thoughts that occurred in my head during the day that didn't exist prior to me being exposed to porn. Fast forward to my life as an adult woman. I only started having sex with my first boyfriend because honestly, I was in university and it occurred to me that my boyfriend would probably leave me if I didn't start being sexually active at a reasonable point. But to be honest, I had no desire to be sexually intimate with any person. I kind of needed the relationship because I lacked a support system at home and I wanted to change my life, but I needed help. I would relieve myself through porn and masturbation. But I watch pretty graphic things. I watch a lot of rape porn and male gay porn even though I'm not gay or not a man. Fast forward today, even in my marriage, I feel like I need to force myself to participate in sex. For me, it's well understood that it's my job or duty to perform this act in a marriage. Not enforced by my partner, he's very understanding. It's simply out of wisdom as one of the things you need to do to sustain a happy marriage. And I do so out of love as well, because I want my partner to enjoy the experience. And for all practical reasons, no one would stay married to someone who does not want to have sex. I also help my partner relieve himself even outside of penetrative sex, because honestly I recognize that men are addicted to sex, and I want to proactively help avoid scenarios of my partner cheating on me in the long term. All in all, I abstained from sexual behavior with my partner for a long time, and through periods of stress, long distance, we had no sex life. But I'm engaging in it purely out of responsibility, love to some extent, but a lot of fear of losing my support system. Would I be committing a sin throughout my life of exposing myself to porn prematurely, watching inappropriate porn content, or even engaging in sexual acts without a personal desire to do it? Well, if you watched any of my videos, you will know that sin is not really a concept that I operate with. So I'm the wrong person to ask if you committed a sin. But you've actually given the answer yourself when you say that you realized that watching porn, for example, exposed you to lower energies that pulled your energies down, and it projected thoughts into your mind. So the way I look at it is, it's not really a matter of sin as committing some sin, or even so much about karma. It's more about what is the effect on you. What is the effect on you in your life, in your daily life? And it has two aspects. Well, it has several aspects, but one of them is the energetic. What happens to your energies? Does something pull your energies down, or does it raise your energies up? So that's the energetic aspect. The other is more the thoughts. What thoughts do you have? How does it affect your self-image? And when I say affect your self-image, I mean, of course, that the combination of the energies and certain thoughts are forming what I have called the subconscious selves. So if you look at yourself based on this question that's asked, and I assume many people can probably relate to this, you can say, what does my relationship with sex, my view of sex, show about my psychology? And how has the way I have dealt with sex in this lifetime, how has it created subconscious selves or reinforced subconscious selves that were already there? So if you're willing to make that switch, then you can do something about it. Then you can start looking at various things. And I would say that what comes to me here is that I'm assuming, since the person is asking me, that she is a spiritual person, open to the spiritual side of life. And so that means you can look at what is the attitude of spiritual people to sex and religious people. And if you are spiritual, I assume you're open to reincarnation. So look back. Let's say you have been a spiritual person for many lifetimes. What might you have done in previous lifetimes? Is it possible you have been part of some monastic order? You have been a nun in several lifetimes? Or maybe you have just been embodying in a religious culture like the Catholic Church or Islam, which has a very specific view of sex and a specific view of women. So the first thing I would recommend here is that you look at, is it possible I have some of these subconscious selves that were created in past lifetimes because I was exposed to this religious culture that sex is a sin? And if you can bring those into the conscious mind and start questioning them, and questioning the worldview or the assumptions that it's based on, then I think you can make some progress. And it's possible you can come to a point where you have dissolved enough of these selves that you had that are based on this warped view that sex is a sin, that you could actually come to a point where you could have a more relaxed view of sex, so that you don't feel like it's something you have to force yourself to engage in. And that might make it a little easier for you to be married and to fulfill your sexual obligations, as you say. But you can also then, after that, I would recommend looking at what selves do you have about being a woman. Because you can again see many of these religious cultures that even though they portray sex as a sin, well, it's something men need and women are supposed to deliver. And you can come to see if you have selves based on this, you can question those, dismiss those selves, and now you can come to a point where you can say, okay, I don't have a warped view that sex is a sin. It's a human activity like eating or riding a bicycle. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But I don't feel as a woman that I am obligated to have sex. And that might lead you to a point where you can make a neutral decision. Because, as I said, when you have a warped view of sex, you can think, you have contradictions, you have a contradictory view. These subconscious selves always come in pairs. So you have one self that's predicting sex is a sin, but another that, oh, it's something you have to do. So it puts you in this catch-22. So what I'm saying, when you get rid of these selves, you can come there where you can look at sex completely neutrally. And you can ask yourself, do I want to engage in sexual activity? And if the answer is, I don't, then you would have to ask yourself some questions relating to your marriage. Is your marriage predicated upon you having sex? Is that sort of an agreement you have with your husband? Then you might need to, well, you could try and talk to your husband, see if you could work out something, or you might need to decide to leave your husband because you can't fulfill his needs, and then live alone. Or you might decide to continue to engage in having sex with your husband, but you can now do it with a more neutral way, maybe even more loving way. Maybe you could even allow yourself to enjoy it. So I'm just saying, again, sex is one of those topics that so many warped views about it in society. And as spiritual people, we have often been exposed to this: sex is wrong. You see it in Christian culture, you see it in the East, you see it in Islam, and especially with women. You know, women have had more projections upon them regarding sex than men, because it's sort of accepted that men need it. And so I think you can make a lot of progress by doing this. I think also, on a little more long term, what you could consider is, again, as spiritual people, and I see this in myself, that we are often very focused on ourselves. We're often very much wrapped up in our own minds, focused on our own, what we call our own spiritual growth. And we may, in past lifetimes, have lived in a monastic setting where we were very much alone, even though there may be a group, but we had our own space we could retreat into. And as a result of this, we might have developed this fear of intimacy, fear of being close with other people. I can see that very much in myself throughout my life. And this, again, of course, comes from subconscious selves. And so in a more long term, you could consider this. Do you have these selves that might even have been reinforced by you being a spiritual person over many lifetimes? And then you could consider dealing with these selves and at least come to a point where you don't have that fear or reluctance to be close to another person. Because what is sex? I mean, sex is really, it's really a boundary crossing experience that goes beyond our normal physical and emotional mental boundaries, where we get so close to another person. I mean, I know you can have sex without being close to another person, but still the physical proximity forces you to have an emotional mental reaction where you either shut off or you open. And the natural result of the sexual act is that you open yourself emotionally and mentally to the other person. And that you benefit from this because it helps you get out of your self-focus. So this is something on a little more long run you could consider, whether you have these cells that you could work on. But I think if you start focus on the first two that I was talking about, I think you could fairly quickly gain some results. And in terms of the question of, would I be committing a sin throughout my life of exposing myself to porn prematurely, watching inappropriate porn content, or even engaging in sexual acts without a personal desire to do it? Well, it's not so much of a sin, but it's the question you could ask yourself is, why have you been doing this? Why have you felt that you should do this? And there must be some cells behind this where you feel, oh, I should, and you're forcing yourself to do it. And it's not so matter whether it's a sin, but obviously by watching porn, you're opening yourself up to the energies, the projections, and the thoughts. And you're just, the more you engage in this activity, the more you reinforce it. The more you create a pull on your emotional and mental bodies from this collective consciousness, where there's a huge collective beast that's been created relating to sex, many actually. And by engaging in these activities, you're opening yourself up to that, and it can then pull on you. And that's what is also described in the question. It pulled you into doing more and more, and that's why people can become addicted to sex or porn, because it's never enough. It creates a tension. It gives you a relief, but it never eradicates the tension. So immediately after the relief, there's a new pull that builds up to where you have to have relief again, and it just keeps going. It never ends. And you have to break it. And you can break it energetically by calling to the Ascended Masters for protection, for cut yourself free, but you really only break it by looking at the subconscious selves that are pulling you into it and dismissing them, coming to the point where you see the illusion. In this case, it sounds like you have two selves, that one is projecting that you don't want this and another that you should engage in it. And this, of course, traps you.